In the heart of the African savanna, under a merciless midday sun, 35-year-old animal behaviorist Mark Thompson drove his weathered Jeep across the golden grasslands. He was deep into his research territory, miles from anywhere, when suddenly the engine sputtered and died. The dashboard lights flickered once, then went dark. Mark's stomach dropped. He checked the fuel gauge. Empty, completely out of fuel. He grabbed the radio, pressing the button frantically. Static. Nothing but harsh, crackling static. He tried again. The same lifeless noise filled the cab. In the shimmering distance, Mark spotted a rocky outcrop rising from the plains. Maybe from higher ground, he could get a signal. It was his only option. He pushed open the Jeep door and started walking, the dry grass crunching beneath his boots. The heat was oppressive. Sweat soaked through his shirt as he trudged toward the rocks, each step feeling heavier than the last. But as he approached the base of the outcrop, something made him freeze. Animal droppings, large, unmistakable droppings. Mark knelt down, examining them closely. His blood ran cold. Fresh lion droppings. Very fresh, less than 5 minutes old, and from the size an adult male. A big one. Goosebumps erupted across his entire body, despite the heat. His pulse hammered in his ears as he slowly, carefully scanned his surroundings. Nothing. Just grass and rocks and silence. Then, a thunderous roar exploded from the rocks, barely 20 meters ahead. Mark's heart nearly stopped. From behind a boulder emerged a massive albino male lion. His fur was pure white, almost ghostly in the harsh sunlight. Beneath that pale coat, Mark could see the lion's ribs pressing against the skin. Starving. Above his left eye was a deep, cross-shaped scar that told of past battles, but it was the eyes that froze Mark's blood. Red eyes, burning with hunger and rage. The lion's gaze locked onto Mark with terrifying intensity. The killing intent was palpable, suffocating. This wasn't just a predator looking at prey. This was desperation. Mark's mind raced through his options. His car had no fuel. Base camp was 20 kilometers away through open savanna. The chances of someone stumbling upon him out here were almost zero. His radio was useless. He was completely, utterly isolated. There seemed to be no way out. The old male lion began moving forward, slowly, deliberately. The sound of his claws scraping against stone and dirt grew louder with each step. Mark's heart pounded so hard it hurt. His hands trembled. He closed his eyes. After all these years studying these magnificent animals, was this how it would end? Just then, another roar exploded from his left side. Powerful, young, fierce. The air seemed to turn cold. Two shadows rushed in like a storm, moving faster than Mark's eyes could track. In an instant, they positioned themselves between Mark and the starving old male. Mark opened his eyes. A young albino male lion stood protectively in front of him, muscles rippling beneath white fur. Beside the young male was a lioness, her stance defensive but calm. Both faced the old lion without fear. The young male slowly turned his head to look at Mark. In that moment, Mark's heart seemed to stop for an entirely different reason. Amber eyes. The young lion had amber eyes. An albino lion with amber eyes. Not red, not the pale blue that sometimes appeared in albino lions, but amber. The exact same rich, golden brown eyes as regular lions. Mark's lips trembled. His knees nearly buckled. Memories from 2 years ago crashed through his mind like a tsunami, vivid and overwhelming. 2 years earlier, Mark had been observing a pride of lions through his binoculars from the safety of his vehicle. One lioness caught his attention, an albino female, which was rare enough, but something about her behavior was off. She kept glancing nervously toward a narrow gap between rocks. Her ears swiveled constantly, alert to every sound. She crouched low, scanning the area with obvious anxiety. She was hiding something. Mark watched, fascinated, as the lioness finally slipped into the gap. Moments later, she emerged carefully. Something small and white clenched gently in her mouth. An albino cub. Through his binoculars, Mark's expression hardened the instant he saw the tiny creature. The cub's small body was covered in deep claw marks and vicious bite wounds. Blood flowed freely from its left shoulder, staining the white fur crimson. Mark understood immediately. A new male had taken over the pride. This was standard lion behavior. New males killed the cubs of the previous leader to bring females into breeding condition faster. But understanding the biology didn't make it any easier to witness. What happened next left Mark stunned. The lioness, still carrying her wounded cub, began walking directly toward Mark's car. This violated everything Mark knew about lion behavior. Wild lions, especially mothers with cubs, never approached humans. Never. But she didn't stop. She came within 10 meters of the vehicle and carefully placed the cub on the ground. Then she stepped back and looked directly at Mark through the windshield. Her gaze pierced straight through him. In her eyes, Mark saw something he'd never seen in a wild animal before. Desperate, pleading hope. "My baby is dying. You're the only one who can help. Please." Mark's chest tightened painfully. His hands shook as he slowly opened the car door. He stepped out, approached the cub, and knelt beside it. The wounds were severe. Infection was already spreading, visible in the inflamed tissue around each puncture and slash. The cub's body temperature was far too high. Fever. Without treatment, the cub wouldn't survive the night. Mark carefully lifted the fragile creature into his arms. Its tiny heart beat irregularly against his chest, weak and faltering. He looked up at the lioness and nodded slowly. A promise. He would save her cub. The nearest veterinary hospital was over 50 kilometers away. The cub might not survive the journey. Mark made a split-second decision. He carried the cub to his car, placed it gently on the passenger seat, and turned toward home, where he had medical supplies. About 5 minutes into the drive, Mark glanced in his rearview mirror. What he saw shocked him to his core. The lioness was running at full speed behind the vehicle, tongue hanging out, panting heavily, her body covered in dust kicked up by the wheels. For 30 kilometers to Mark's home, through the heat of the day, the lioness ran without stopping once. Her feet stumbled on rocks. Her body swayed from side to side. Several times she looked ready to collapse, but she always caught herself and kept running. This was a mother's love made visible. She would run until her legs broke, until she couldn't breathe, until her heart burst. For her one and only baby, she would never give up. This was everything a mother could give. When they finally arrived near Mark's home, the lioness looked ready to collapse. Her entire body was drenched in sweat and caked with dust. Blood seeped from her torn paw pads, but her eyes never left her cub. Mark carried the cub inside and immediately began emergency treatment. He cleaned the wounds thoroughly, applied disinfectant, and administered antibiotics from his research supplies. His hands worked steadily, efficiently. "You're going to be all right," he whispered to the small creature, trembling in his hands. After hours of careful treatment, the cub's breathing finally began to stabilize. Its heart rate grew stronger, more regular. Mark walked to the window carrying the cub and held it up where the lioness could see. Alive. Safe. Through the window, he watched as the lioness collapsed on the grassland about 50 meters from the house. She couldn't move anymore. Her body had given everything, but her eyes remained fixed on the window, watching. Night fell across the savannah. Dark clouds rolled in, and rain began to fall. First a drizzle, then heavier. Soon it became a downpour, lightning flashing and thunder roaring across the plains. Mark looked out the window. The lioness was still sitting in the exact same spot, completely drenched, not moving an inch, her eyes still locked on the house. All night the rain fell. All night. The lioness sat. Dawn finally broke. As the sun rose and the rain lessened to a drizzle, only then did the lioness slowly stand on shaking legs and stagger away into the grasslands. The next morning, Mark woke to a strange sound at his door. He opened it to find a large antelope carcass lying at the entrance, still warm, freshly killed. 50 meters away, the lioness sat quietly watching. Tears filled Mark's eyes. He understood. A mother's wish for her cub to eat well and grow strong. He bowed deeply in respect. The lioness nodded slowly and disappeared into the grass. The next morning, prey was there again. And the next day, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. Every single dawn, without fail, the lioness brought food. Antelope legs, small gazelles, rabbits, whatever she could catch. Rain or shine, injured or sick, She never missed a single day. Mark understood why. The lioness knew she couldn't take her cub back. The new male still ruled the pride. If she returned with the cub, it would be killed immediately. But in her longing, in her guilt, in her endless love, the lioness came every day. She needed to see her cub, even from a distance. On the 30th day at dawn, the lioness left her offering and sat much longer than usual. She gazed at the house for a long time. Through the window she could see her cub, now remarkably healthy, wounds completely healed, running around energetically inside. But they couldn't go back together. That door was closed forever. The lioness let out a long, mournful cry, a final farewell. Then she slowly turned and disappeared into the tall grass. After that day, the lioness never appeared again. At first, Mark worried. Had something happened to her? Had she given up? But soon he realized the truth. She hadn't given up at all. Quite the opposite. She had determined that her mission was perfectly complete. She had run 30 kilometers without stopping. She had kept vigil all night in the pouring rain. She had brought food every single day for a month. She had done everything a mother could possibly do. Now she trusted Mark completely. Without doubt, without worry. This human will raise my cub well. This person can protect my baby. Perfect trust. Mark's throat tightened. He nodded to the empty grassland, accepting the responsibility. Mark cared for the cub with complete devotion. Every day he cleaned the healing wounds and fed it nutritious meat. The cub recovered with remarkable speed. One day Mark examined the cub's eyes more closely. Something was unusual. Albino, but the eyes weren't red or blue. They were amber, the exact same color as regular lions. This was extraordinarily rare. Mark had read about such cases, but never seen one himself. 6 months passed. The cub grew into a lively adolescent. 1 year passed, and the young lion was nearly full-grown, with sleek muscles and powerful shoulders. Those amber eyes remained unchanged. The time for separation arrived. Mark had grown deeply attached, but lions belonged in the wild. That was nature's law, and Mark had to honor it, even though part of his heart crumbled at the thought. He loaded the young lion into his vehicle and drove deep into the savannah. When he opened the door, the lion stepped out but didn't immediately leave. Instead, he gazed at Mark. In those amber eyes were gratitude and farewell. Mark nodded, unable to speak. The lion nodded slowly in return, then turned and walked into the vast grasslands. Mark stood watching until the white form disappeared completely from view. And now, 1 year later, that same lion with amber eyes had returned, along with his mother, to save Mark's life. The young lion and his mother now faced the old scarred male who had tried to kill him 2 years ago. This was the same lion who had risen to power and ordered the death of all cubs. Now old, weak, and driven from the pride, he wandered the fringes alone and desperate. The young lion and the old lion stared at each other. Tension crackled in the air. The old male looked directly at the young lion's face, those amber eyes. In that moment, recognition sparked. The cub from 2 years ago, the one he'd tried to kill, now stood before him as a powerful young warrior. The old male was experienced enough to know he couldn't win this fight. To preserve his last shred of dignity, he growled once more. But it was hollow, not a real threat, just a bluff. The dethroned king turned sadly and disappeared into the savannah. The sun was setting, the sky turned deep red, then quickly darkened. Thousands of stars appeared one by one, their light cascading down to softly illuminate the entire savannah. Mark needed to return to base camp. As he stood to begin the long walk, the young albino male lion and the mother lioness positioned themselves on either side of him. Like bodyguards, they stayed close and watched the surroundings intently. From the darkness, the howling of a hyena pack echoed. The young lion immediately growled in that direction. One threatening roar, and the sound stopped. Throughout the entire 20-kilometer journey, the two lions never left Mark's side. Starlight lit their path. The Milky Way flowed brilliantly overhead. The mother lioness occasionally turned to look at Mark, her eyes overflowing with gratitude. The young lion walked proudly beside him, no longer a wounded cub trembling before death. He was destined to become the savannah's new king. In Mark's mind, memories flashed like a vivid panorama. The mother who ran 30 kilometers without stopping, her figure sitting guard all night in the pouring rain. That love bringing food every single day for a month. Everything had been for this moment. That love had saved Mark's life today. The stars shone even brighter, as if blessing this beautiful journey. Mark's legs trembled. His stamina had reached its limit, but he couldn't stop. Every time Mark stumbled, the young lion let him lean against his powerful body. Warm body heat transferred from lion to human. What Mark had done 2 years ago, the lion was now returning. 20 kilometers. In the distance, the lights of base camp began to appear faintly through the darkness. The lions stopped. They couldn't go any farther. Mark knelt and looked at the two lions. Under the brilliant starlight, three beings faced each other, human and wild animals, yet they were family. The young lion slowly approached and gently touched Mark's hand with his nose. Mark's hand trembled as he stroked the lion's face, feeling the warm fur beneath his palm. The mother lioness quietly approached and rested her head on Mark's shoulder, a reunion after 2 years of separation. Mark's eyes glistened with tears. The lion slowly turned away. Bathed in starlight, two white shadows began walking back into the savannah. They melted into the starlight like ghosts, like spirits, like legends. Mark remained kneeling until they completely disappeared from view. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. The savanna's night breeze blew softly across his face. Stars poured down from the heavens. Mark finally stood and slowly walked into camp. His mind was full of thoughts, his heart full of emotions he couldn't name. Maternal love transcends all species. Gratitude always returns, no matter how much time passes. And true love is never, ever forgotten. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe. More moving stories of the wild are coming soon. Thank you.